This is about the time I was sworn in as Secretary of Labor, and I'd asked the governor's advance people if there was time in his schedule to accommodate a visit with my sister and some of her friends. They attended an adult daycare center for the developmentally disabled, and I thought it would be great for them to come to the State House. After the ceremony, I introduced the governor to my sister, and I introduced her friends, and he sat with them for I don't know how long, 15 or 20 minutes, no matter how he was getting beaten up to move on to the next event. But he brought such joy to them. It brought joy to him too. He treated them all like they were heads of state. That's what I would say.
And to this day, I bet you Paula talks about it, right?
Paula talks about it, and so do her friends.
I think that's something that people don't necessarily pick up from on the campaign trail. They don't really realize how charismatic and empathetic he is. I remember the day that I got sworn in, and my grandmother, who was in her 80s at the time and had voted Democrat her entire life. If you had a D next to your name, you would get voted for. If you were a Republican, you were evil. And that was just the way she was raised. And she said, "God, I hope you never run for office because I don't know what I would do. Could I vote for you? I'm not sure." And she met the governor, and she probably had not voted for him, but he won her over very, very quickly because he was so engaging with her and so warm. And I think she was really just incredibly impressed.
Swearing-in ceremony, you remember that? And the reception afterwards, I had my kids with us, and my daughter was completely overwhelmed by all the noise. She was just like buried into me. And he was like, "You need to leave and go into that room now." And it was just so nice because, we're all in the midst of this ceremony, and he noticed that she was like completely overwhelmed.
There was a military person who had just been given his World War II medal, finally, and told him the story, and he said, "You know what, I think I'd like to call that person." And so I said, "I'll set it up." And we started to practice once a week. He'd pick up the phone, dial it himself, and have a beautiful conversation with somebody who was an extraordinary citizen, just a regular person, but who had done something, earned something, accomplished something, and the governor wanted to congratulate them.
You made me think about a time that we had a jobs fair, and there was a young black woman who approached me, and I learned she's a single mom, and she started to just talk to me, and she explained to me she was unemployed. She looked across the room, and the governor was attending this particular event, and she said, she says, "I would love to meet the governor." And so I took her by the hand to introduce her to the governor, and what was so beautiful about that interaction was it was like the governor was in slow motion. It was like he just sort of sat down, he paid attention, he sat with her, he talked with her, he made her day. He really, really made her day. And it brought, in a corny kind of way, almost tears to my eyes because I kind of understood where that young woman was coming from and how important it would be. And I bet you she's telling the story right now. I bet you anything that she's telling the story.
That's kept secret what a nice man Mitt Romney is, honestly, right? And why don't they report the nice stuff?
Well, we want people to see what we see. And so that's why we're here, aren't we?
I was very lucky because in 2008 we had been down to New York City and visiting, came back up to Boston. I was about to hop in my car to go see Ryan, who's now my husband, and passed out, had a seizure. I didn't know what happened. It was one of the scariest moments of my life, and they took me to the hospital, and the guy said, and you guys know the story, where it's like, "You have a brain tumor this large," and they kept me for 10 days, and then finally they had to do 3 surgeons had to do the surgery. One of the first calls I got when I was recovering from the surgery was from Mitt. I have to tell you, that call from Mitt meant a lot. And
then he followed up too, right?
And he did follow
Leave it
up.
at that.
And,
he just
and then also the team too, where Cindy's not here today, but Mitt kind of put out the call to, "Hey guys, Renee kind of needs some help." But it's been really fun to be out on the road and tell these stories and tell people why Mitt Romney is such a good man. Right?
He really is a good man.